In today's episode, we visit a supplement manufacturing facility. I'm here at Formulife HQ in Dallas, Texas with my good man Scott. What's happening,
Hello.
Scott? And Matt from Rise. What's happening, Matt?
How you doing, man?
We are about to dive on into Formulife. Scott is going to take us for a ride.
Gonna see it all.
Into the supplement production manufacturing process. Let's go.
Testing the whole nine.
Let's go.
This is our climate controlled warehouse. This is where we keep all ingredients, actives and excipients like flavoring, sweeteners and things like that. Have to keep them in a low temperature. Things need to be about 75 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. Joe, what is that in Celsius? 30, 20 something?
Yeah, 20 something.
So,
let's go with 20 something.
20 something, there you go. But if things get too hot, especially a lot of the good active ingredients that are in pre-workouts and some BCAAs, they actually will congeal, rock up, and that is a very, very bad thing. It's not good for the longevity of the product, so that's why everything's kept here under climate control. But everything that we keep in here, every single ingredient, we know exactly where it comes from, we know exactly where it is in our system, we know the vendor, we know how much we got. We know every single ingredient that goes into every single lot. Everything can be traced both ways. So any sort of product, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years from now, I can go back and look at every single lot of creatine, caffeine, whatever it may be that's in there. Same thing, if there's ever a product with an ingredient that somehow we didn't catch, we can go back and find, oh, this particular lot of caffeine had an issue. What all products did that go into? Complete traceability back and forth, and it starts here in the warehouse. So this is a giant vacuum cleaner, essentially. It's a deduster, an explosion-proof deduster. It cleans all of our production rooms, and every single production room with encapsulators, tablet presses, mixers, whatever it may be, we have a drop. We try to keep as much of any sort of particulates out of the air as possible. It all goes to this machine. This thing, believe it or not, how often do we change the drums in there? Every day. This thing pulls out so much dust and particulates from the facility that we have to empty these 55-gallon drums every single day. This is a Bosch 1505 encapsulator. This thing can make 93,000 capsules an hour. Every single time that thing rotates, 9 capsules spit out of it. It's exceptionally fast, exceptionally robust. It has very low weight variability. And it just doesn't break down. This thing is a tank of an encapsulator. It turns your powder, the product, into a little slug where eventually it's dropped into a capsule body and this machine closes it, it spits it out. When this process is done, it goes into a secondary process where the capsules are polished. It removes any of the static dust or formula that's stuck to the outside of it. Makes for a good shiny capsule. Every 45 minutes we go through and check the weights via QC. We pull a sample of 10 capsules or 10 tablets, if it's tablets, get the average capsule weight, and our allowable variation internally is plus or minus 3% of the target weight. That means if you were supposed to have 700 milligrams of product inside the capsule itself, you would only have about a 21 milligram variance plus or minus from that weight. These machines, you load the bulk capsules, tablets, soft gels, and it runs down a raceway where everything's counted and held in a gate system until it counts 60, 90, 120 capsules or tablets or whatever it is, and then released into a bottle. A line like this with a dual head filler can probably go up to about 40, 50 bottles a minute depending on the fill size. This machine here is an induction sealer. For any type of bottle that you have that you pull off the lid, when there's a liner that's stuck to the bottle, that's what this machine does. There's a little bit of metal in every single liner, and this machine here heats up that metal and activates a glue, and that's what causes it to stick to the actual bottle. So when these things are on, you can stick your hand on it and it's not hot, but if you were to have any metal on your hand, a ring, a watch, and you put it on there, it would instantly heat it up and burn you. This right here, this is a side transfer conveyor. It grabs the bottles and pulls them over a photo eye, and when that photo eye is tripped, it sprays on the lot number, the date coding information, anything that's required by the regulatory bodies to be able to track and trace dietary supplements. This is a 155 cubic foot blender. This thing will hold about 2,700 kilos based on the densities that we typically work with. You know, that could be around 10,000, 12,000 pre-workouts, BCAAs in that range. You can do lightweight protein mixing. You know, with a 2,700 kilo capacity, you're not going to get a ton of proteins in there. If you're doing a 5-pound protein, you might only get 1,200 5-pound proteins in that, if that. This is a 400 cubic foot blender. This thing will hold about 6 metric tons of material, 6,000 kilos. Is that 13,200 pounds, something like that. This will make a lot of protein, a lot of pre-workouts. You're talking 20, 30,000 pre-workouts per single blend. If you're talking about a capsule bottle or a tablet bottle, you might get 150,000 bottles out of a single blend with this machine. These grates are so heavy you can't lift them by hand, not even Joe. They have to be pneumatically actuated. Looks like a protein. It is a protein. I smell it. It smells like a cinnamon type protein.
So Scott, one of the questions that we always get about the blending process is how do you know that, like, when you look at a label of a pre-workout, for example, and it's got a certain number of milligrams of each of the ingredients, how do you ensure from a blending process that the final product has those exact amounts of those ingredients?
There's multiple ways. A lot of it does go into quality control. A lot of it is validating your mixing processes. There's a lot of different ways to mix things. You can use ribbon blenders, you can use paddle blenders, you can use V blenders or slant cone blenders, and they all have different mixing properties.
Yeah.
Ribbon blenders mix in multiple ways. They mix radially, so they spin. There's a big ribbon like you see in here that's mixing everything radially, but it's also pushing all the material to the center of the mixer and creating turbulence there. So it's a dual stage mixing. It's accurate, it's aggressive. It's good at mixing even things with relatively different particle sizes, and that's really good, even though most of everything that we use is a very, very small particle size range. So a lot of it has to do with your inputs. You have to ensure that you've got the right inputs and the right ingredients, and we'll go in there and look in the lab here in a little bit. But after that, a lot of it's testing too. You have to validate these things. You have to test certain ingredients. In any product, there's major, minor, and micro ingredients. Your dye is an example of a micro ingredient. You may only have 1 milligram of an FD&C dye per serving in something, but you might have 8 grams of citrulline malate or 6 grams of citrulline malate. That would be a major ingredient. You might have 400 milligrams of caffeine. That would be a minor ingredient. If you quantify each one of those and they're all within range, and you know your inputs are correct, your input weights, your discharge weights, it stands to reason that everything is in that product. And then occasionally you do want to do a full label verification where you go and send that off to a third-party lab and ensure that everything is within spec. There's always going to be a tiny amount of variability. This is, you know, mixing is a science, but it's kind of an art as well. You might, in some servings, have 30 milligrams extra of an amino acid if it's included at gram level, but it's pretty exact, and we'll go in there and look exactly what we do in the lab after this.
Is there like a kind of acceptable variance in terms of the percentage of, you know, how much a particular ingredient may vary by?
With the FDA, typically you have a plus or minus 10% variance on there, okay. and we keep, like I previously mentioned, we keep our fill weights and our tolerances much lower than that. Yeah. We look at a plus or minus 3% variance is acceptable here. There's certain things, certain vitamins, that over time, if they degrade, you actually might put intentionally over what's in the product to ensure a certain shelf life. Yeah. So if you know that there's going to be a fat-soluble vitamin that degrades over time, you might put an extra 20% if you want a 2-year shelf life or something like that. And there's actually, you know, standard dosing charts for those kind of things. You know, that's scientifically found that you need to use this much more for a 1-year, a 2-year, or a 3-year shelf life. This is our analytical lab, and we have a variety of equipment here that makes us like ensure identity, quality, consistency of our both ingredients and our finished goods. So as soon as we receive in an ingredient, it's pulled and the sample is brought to the lab. This right here is a flavoring ingredient. This is 2 50-gram samples, and our receiving warehouse personnel have to fill out this form. It gets brought to the lab, and they do a litany of tests. Every single ingredient has a different set of tests that go with it. Flavoring ingredients, sweeteners and stuff like that, it's a little less stringent per the FDA than an active ingredient, an amino acid or caffeine or a vitamin or something like that. But we have equipment that can help identify it. We have a machine over here called an FTIR. You can scan almost any powder or liquid with this machine, and it'll give it a thumbprint. It'll give it a spectrum, and you can compare that spectrum to a database that you've created. This is an example right here. This is a spectrum from a finished good that shows a current run, a previous run, and the reference standard. So we're looking at 3 different runs, and you can see they match very, very similarly. That's an example of a good mix right there. This machine is really good at showing continuity. From mix to mix, we test every batch in here too. Before we proceed, it's brought into this machine and we scan it against its previous batch and a reference standard made by the lab. So that's how we ensure that your mix from batch to batch is correct, like we talked about before. This machine right here is a UV Vis. This machine's good at quantifying and identifying vitamins and some minerals, right, Erica? I might need your help here in a minute. I'm exceeding my nerd credentials. But yes, this machine right here, certain things can't be scanned by FTIR, certain things can't be scanned by HPLC. We'll go over that in a minute, but that's what this machine is good for. What all do we test with this?
We like to do a lot of vitamins, so if you buy anything that's less than 100%, like 10% folic acid, IR can't necessarily straight up identify. It can show continuity from the vendor that we buy it from, but to actually verify that there's folic acid in it, that's what mainly the UV Vis is for. So it's good for a lot of vitamin percentages, raw materials that we buy.
Machines are HPLCs. These machines are good at quantifying an ingredient. If you wanted to test to find out exactly how much caffeine's in your product or exactly how much arginine's in your product, you can do it with these machines. It also can create a positive ID for ingredients as well. If you were looking for a green tea leaf extract that was standardized for a certain amount of EGCG, you can confirm the amount of EGCG in here, but actually you can't tell that it's green tea. For something like that, you need a machine like this. This is a TLC, thin layer chromatography, so you can actually separate the ingredient into visual bands. Is that what that does?
Yes, so I do have an example. It's a little old, so the plate is definitely a little bit miscolored, but the idea is you can run a reference standard, and then the idea is to see that band line up similarly from the raw material.
So that's how technical it can get. You have to use this machine to make sure that it's green tea, and then you have to use that machine to ensure that it's 50% or 60% EGCG. Can't do it with a single machine, and a lot of people don't have that level of testing. We have 3 HPLCs here, and some people have 1 or none, and that's not a good thing. So there's a litany of other devices here for testing tablet friability to make sure they don't chip apart or break apart in transit. Make sure they're hard enough. That's what this is for. We have moisture balances to ensure the ingredients that we get in don't have too much moisture in them, especially for products manufactured in the US and then shipped via ocean freight to Australia. That's a big deal. If an ingredient comes in and there's too much moisture in that ingredient and then it sits on ocean freight for 4 weeks sometimes, the heat from that ocean freight can actually cook out the moisture, and then it's in the headspace of that container and it'll soak back into the ingredients, and that's why you see clumping, that's why you see hardening of product, and it's very, very important to make sure the ingredients don't have that additional moisture. All of our ingredients have a moisture spec, so they check it when it comes in to make sure that it doesn't exceed that. These machines are BioLumix rapid result microbial testing machines. So to ensure that there's no E. coli, staph, salmonella, and to ensure the total plate count and yeast and molds are within an acceptable limit, we test it with this machine. We can actually do manual plating. We have 2 microbiologists on staff. They can actually do the old petri dish style and grow stuff on it, but these machines can give you similar results in 48 hours. Doing the manual plating actually can take 7 to 10 days, and that slows the release of the product to the brands and then to the customers. So this is very, very good at being able to clear these products, making sure that they're good to send out, safe for consumers, and get them out our door as quickly as possible. But everything that's delicious that comes from Formula Life comes from this lady's mouth. So is that weird to say? That might be weird to say. We do all of our flavoring R&D in here. She'll make individual samples, ship them to customers. Usually there's a two-way feedback where, you know, hey, increase sweetness, you know, 10% or something like that, or increase acidity, or change the color, or whatever it may be. And she goes back and forth and just volleys those until the customer approves it. We lock it in. She makes that reference standard that we talked about in the lab earlier. They scan it in, so they have the lab reference standard. Then they test every batch against that, and they also test every batch against the previous production batch. So those are the three spectrums that you saw on the screen. They matched up perfectly. That was a great example. That's when you know the things are very, very good. That's a very qualitative test. After the fact on those finished goods, that's when you go and look in the HPLC, test individual ingredients to ensure their quantity matches label claim. But yeah, she does everything in here from capsules to creating little mixtures for the tablets. When we do that stuff, though, we have to scale it up. She's got a little baby. It's buried under stuff. That is what is that? 1 cubic foot? Yes. 2 cubic? Okay, 1 cubic foot ribbon blender. That is the little microscopic baby version of the 400 cubic foot we just looked at. So the cool thing is when we need to ensure something blends well, given that mixing technology, we can scale it from a lab size up to a giant production size, and we know that it's going to work the same via that method. So that's the reason we have that guy in there. Not everything has to be tested that way, but sometimes when you do have particle size variation, you want to make sure that it will mix properly, and that's what that's here for.
And that's a wrap. Scott, thank you for showing us around.
Thank you guys.
From raw ingredients to blending to flavoring to capsulation to packaging to everything, from the ground up. That's how it happens here. Well, here at Formulife, and that's pretty much how we go from raw ingredients to the supplements that you guys take.
Hope you guys like them.
Appreciate your time, man.
Thank you.
And guys, that's a wrap for today's episode of MJ Everyday. As always, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, turn your post notifications on both on your mobile, your cell phone, and your desktop PC so you don't miss a beat when it comes to the Massive Joe's YouTube channel. Until tomorrow, I'm coming to you from MassiveJoes.com. Stay massive. Thank you for tuning in to this video. We hope you enjoyed watching. Don't forget to check out our latest upload and our recommended video, and be sure to subscribe to the Massive Joe's YouTube channel to stay up to date with all of our latest uploads.